art and originality. When you talk about art, you talk about originality by default. That is one of the big things. Can you make original art? I once even saw a video where people were like, we're out of melodies. They're like, we're out of original melodies. There are no more original melodies. And that scared me so much. I was like, what? How are we out of original melodies? We're not. But when you think about art and when you think about an art course, originality has to be included. How do we define it? Does it exist? Has it ever existed? How much originality is needed for it to be an original work? We're going to talk about all of that. But before we get into it, go into the description, don't fall, and check out my poetry book, my fiction book, my Spotify. I have a new podcast episode out every Friday. And my TikTok, because that's where you do your homework and tag me if you want my reaction to it. Okay, let's get into it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions with originality is that it needs to be 100% original, and you're like, huh? Can you copy 50%? No. You cannot copy at all. Let's just put that out in front. Let's just say it how it is. You cannot copy. However, I'll give you a very simple example of music. There are only 88 notes, something like that. There's only 8 octaves. And those notes. But there's an infinite way to combine them. But there's an infinite way of numbers. There's an infinite way of combining them. Even if it's just a break, a rest, how many times you go at the same note before you change. There are so many ways that you can make this combination new. But you're still working within the same framework of those notes. Now, there are other pianos who also, they don't even just have half notes, they have quarter notes. Not quarter notes in the sense of time, but in the sense of pitch. So you can expand it further. But there is a limited amount of notes, even if you take in all of those as well. So you're like, okay. So obviously things might sound slightly similar, but they're not the same number. 1,000 and 100 and 10,000 start with the same one, but it's not the same number. You'd have a very different reaction if someone gave you that amount of money. So that's the first thing. And you're like, I'm still not convinced. I'm going to give you a really, really cool example that blew my mind when I found out about it, which is genetics and how close we are to monkeys. So I wrote it down. 98 to, this is why I'm not a mathematician, 98.5 to 96% genetics in common with human chimpanzees and 98.3 with gorillas. You're like, okay, thanks for this information. That means that 4% and that 1.7%, did I write that right down? Is huge. That is a huge difference. That 1% makes the biggest difference. Because my claim is not, oh, we're just so similar. My claim is 1% is a humongous difference. The same way the number 2 or number 1 in front of 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros, 5 zeros, 6 zeros makes a huge difference. You can buy different things. You can go to different countries. You can afford a different apartment. There's a huge difference within these numbers, even though they start with the same number. And it's the same with art. Now, because I prefaced this very intelligently with that you cannot copy, because you can't. You shouldn't just be like, I'm going to copy. But being inspired, not on purpose, but by just living life is inevitable. And you're like, is it? Let me tell you. When a baby learns their emotions, they take their cues from their parents to a degree. Now, hunger and these innate things, okay. But if I'll leave all of these at the end, I'll leave all of the references and stuff at the end as screenshots. The gorilla statistic and the other thing. When a baby cries, when a baby falls and take away the fact that it's actually hurt, okay? It's just falling and it's not hurt. But if the parent reacts and it's like, no, are you okay? The baby will start crying. Not the baby, but yes, the baby, but also a little bit older. They take their cues from their parents. Even just adult people who live around other people, they pick up on their accents. It's very rare that people live together and they have completely different accents forever, unless it's their mother tongue. If one is British and one is American, they're probably not going to adapt within that time. But if you both share a second language and one has a stronger accent, people adapt accents really quickly. But that's not the point. The point is, we, even from babies, take on cues from other people. We learn emotions from other people. We learn languages from other people. So this idea that we're just like this self-made thing is quite ridiculous. But it is also not to say to copy. That's why active copying, no. But you can, I'll give you an easy example. Look up a singer you really love and then listen to an interview of the singers they really love. You can see the influences. You can see what kind of music they listen to. You can tell when someone's listening to Whitney and when someone's listening to Mariah, and you can even tell their favorite singer usually. Now, throughout their career, they usually develop their own voice, but they're building it on something else. Not because they're like actively copying what was singing maybe more than other things, but not even then. But because this is something they enjoy to begin with, and then they make it their own. And the same is with art. And there is an amount of originality, which I would say is that 4%, as I referenced earlier with the monkeys, that you have innately. That is that 4%. It's just there. It's the way you feel things, and you're like, 4% is not enough. Really. You and a chimpanzee, you don't think you have enough things not in common? And it's the same with, I think, variation even. I read this between the same race is sometimes bigger than with other races, but that's not the point. But small percentages make a huge difference in genetics. And my point is not genetics, my point is that 1% makes a huge difference. People who invent things, words, they've heard words before. Now, I'm not an originally absolutist in the sense of original absolutist, where it's like you cannot sound and seem like anything else. Because I believe in that 4%, and if that 4% is activated, you don't sound like anybody else anyways. Like, you sound like yourself. You seem like yourself. You draw like yourself. I think you should be motivated by internal things. That's why I say be honest in your art. Say what you truly mean. Don't try to seem cool. Care. Care about the things you care about, and don't care about the things you don't care about. Don't fake care, obviously. But that is it. I'm not like, well, you can't have a single note in common. Again, 100, 1,000, a million. One number. The same first number. But it is so different. It is so different. So just take that into account. Originality is inevitable if you have that 4%. If you have the honesty, check out all the other videos. If you have all of these things, and if you really take it serious and you try to find your voice, then it's fine. And I'm going to comfort you. We've not run out of original melodies. We've not run out of original concepts, because two people falling in love, it's completely different with every two people. It's even different for if you have one person the same and they fall in love with 3 different people. That is such a different experience. Even the same people falling in love again and again, and like, you know, those movies where they fall in love, then they fall apart, then fall in love, then they fall apart, whatever. It's different. And does that mean they fundamentally changed? They used to be humans, now they're giraffes? No. It just means that 4% is a lot. And I'm not saying there isn't art that is even more different than 4%, but I'm saying 4% is enough as long as you're honest, because that's authenticity. Authenticity is honesty. Everything else can change. Like, your authentic self is not someone who's like horribly negative. It's just who you are at the time. That's why authenticity can change. And authenticity, I think, encapsulates your goals as well. If your authentic self is never to produce art, but you want to make art, that's not authenticity, because it's actually not honest with who you are and who you want to be. So, this is your homework. Get 2 of your favorite musicians, listen to one of their songs, and then listen in an interview who their favorite musicians is, and then listen to one of their songs and tell me if they're inspired. Early albums. So I want you to take famous songs from the guy, so the musician, you listen to their first album, one of the songs, and then you listen to the inspired person. But you listen to the first album, and then you can later listen to the later albums, but you should try to see the similarities, because later in your favorite musicians' albums, they will have found their voice. But the first album usually sounds quite similar to whoever they were inspired by. Not completely identical, they still have probably that 4%. But you'll understand how you need to start somewhere to get somewhere. And I think with music, it's probably easier to tell. And also scientists, they read science before they make new theories up. Writers, they've learned the language before they wrote in it. And all of that stuff. And you can tell the same story 50 times, and nobody's lived your life before. And nobody will live your life again. Even if they have very similar things, they won't live exactly the same life with exactly your interpretation. And that is your key to originality. Okay, if you want to do that homework, clip the moments that you see the similarities in and tag me on TikTok. But if not, just keep it to yourself and enjoy. Again, a round of applause. I'm so proud of you for really going after this goal. And if you have any questions, leave in the comments, subscribe, and like, and yeah.